All right, welcome back to another episode of Acquisitions Anonymous, the internet's #1 podcast where we review small businesses for sale, usually south of $20 million, and we talk about whether we would buy them or whether we would not. Usually, we have a guest from the sector for the deals that we're talking about, but today you get just the three of us, myself, Bill D'Alessandro, and my two co-hosts, Mills Snell and Michael Girdley. The theme of today's episode is transaction adjacent real estate services, which is the sexy name we came up with for a real estate appraisal business and a home staging business. So we figured, hey, we could buy both of these, call it real estate or transaction adjacent real estate services, and raise it 5 times revenue. So we're going to talk about all the services adjacent to a real estate transaction.
You've already received 3 term sheets since we started recording, so congratulations.
It's called branding. This one, the branding guy. All right, but first, thank you to our gracious sponsor. I'll throw it over to Michael to introduce them.
So one sponsor today, we have tinyacquisitions.com. They are our longest running sponsor, by the way. So thank you to those guys. Tiny Acquisitions is a site where you can go online. That is a place where you can go acquire very small, tiny project-based businesses that are typically $5,000 or less. And basically, they're typically tech that's already built or a product that's already built that needs to be taken to market and grown. So really good for somebody that's looking for a side hustle, looking to run their marketing chops and that sort of thing. And I see on their website here, they just got the #3 product of the day on Product Hunt. So that's a real deal to get up there on that site. So thanks for Tiny Acquisitions on our never-ending quest to make this podcast break even. So thanks to them. And back over to you, Bill.
All right, cool. Thank you, Michael. So Tiny Acquisitions has not only the distinction of being our longest running sponsor, but our only sponsor for today. So double thank you to Tiny Acquisitions. You get 2 for 1 today. So we're going to get right into it. So our first deal is going to be, which one do we decide? Mills or Girdley?
Yep.
Who's going first?
Yep, I'll take
Mills.
it. I'll take it. So this is a real estate appraiser firm in the Southeast, and it kind of caught my eye. I like to at least just take a look at anything that's Southeast based that, based on the descriptor, piques my interest. And this was one. I think these businesses are kind of interesting but also tricky. So we've got a teaser on it. It's a Southeast based real estate appraiser founded in the year 2000. Their ownership is supported by 13 full-time appraisal professionals. Management indicates that the current personnel can facilitate the planned growth. Revenues generated from the company's appraisals, which account for 100% of the revenues for 2020. They've been focused on convenience and gas properties historically, but they currently are expanding and they are specializing in service offerings to branded fast food and quick service restaurants, QSRs. The company offers excellent service quality to clients and is focused on a highly specialized market, which drives word of mouth referrals and repeat business from customers. The primary means for expanding its customer base is direct marketing to prospective clients and promotion via trade shows and industry-related group activities. They are doing, in 2020, they did $1.4 million in revenue and $230,000 in EBITDA. In 2021, they're projecting, and I don't exactly remember when I pulled this, but they're projecting $2 million in revenue and $632,000 in EBITDA. So it looks like they're, we don't have full financials on this, or at least that I can talk about, but it looks like their overhead, their fixed cost is somewhat truly fixed, right? And there's not a lot of variable costs because a lot of that revenue increase fell to the bottom line. They are primarily like 98% of their customers are banks, right? So if you're buying a piece of property, you have to get an appraisal done, and it's a somewhat regulated process. The bank puts it out to bid, and the appraisers can respond with a price and a time frame. Like, I'll charge you $500, but I'm going to do it in a month, or I'm going to charge you $1,000 and I'll do it next week. Is typically the way it works. And then they show us their geographical breakdown in 2020. About 25% of it's based in Georgia, 7% in South Carolina, whoop, whoop, 9% in North Carolina, 8% in Virginia, and 51% in other states. So I think it sounds like most of this is their niche driven. So if they've made their way focusing on gas stations and convenience stores, I really like that as a differentiator. EBITDA margin has fluctuated from 2018 to 2021, but they're certainly top ticking right now. 2021 is 31% EBITDA margins, and 2 years ago it was 6.9%. So you'd really want to dig in and figure out what that variability is about. 2 owners, 13 appraisers. It says that they're not very dependent on current ownership. Not sure if most of the appraisers are remote or independent contractors or all sitting in the same office, but I would have a lot of questions about that. Strong client relationships, a lot, like 90% rate of repeat business. Top 5 clients have been working with the company for a minimum of 13 to 20 years. They say that it's easy to replicate, standardized growth formula. They have opportunities to scale, and that they have an efficient reach. Their operations are easily carried out from the company's headquarters. Key personnel occasionally travel to client locations, but the company primarily manages all client interaction from afar, resulting in more efficient operations. What do you guys think?
Wow, does this not suck? This is pretty cool.
People think that we hate every deal, and what they, I think, hopefully realize is that the more deals you look at, the pickier you get.
So there is a level of regulatory barriers to entry on this. So you do have to go through, in most states, a licensing process to become a real estate appraiser. And then my buddy just went through it. So he did like a whole year of classes, and now he's like an apprentice working for another real estate appraiser. So I think like some of the other stuff we've looked at, like the RIAs and the dentist offices and stuff, you're going to have to go through some of that. Though it's not that hard. It's not like trying to become a lawyer or something. It takes 5 years. It seems to take about a year and a half to get you there. But there is regulatory barriers to being in this business, I think.
Yeah, it looks like a really one of the most pure fixed cost businesses, at least from the numbers that we've seen in a while. Because if you look at they're projecting to go from 1.4 million to 2 million in revenue. So 600K of incremental sales is going to lead to almost exactly 400K of incremental EBITDA. And that is a hell of a flow through margin on incremental revenue. And that's what takes their EBITDA margin from 16% to almost 32%, kind of overnight. So it could be that, I'd ask questions about, we don't have the 2019, 2018 revenue numbers, but this could be they've got kind of a network of licensed real estate appraisers, in each of the states, as per the pie chart that's on screen right now. And they just kind of farm them out work, pay them a fixed fee, and charge whatever they can to the bank. I gotta imagine those client relationships are really sticky. It says here the top 5 clients have been working with the company for a minimum of 13 years to a high of 20 years. Like once you get in with a bank, I mean, like, can you imagine like somebody who's more just like stamping it out on a daily basis than a commercial banker? Like, just call my gas station appraiser guy. Like, I really don't think he's shopping for like the best rate on appraiser. So this is like service business. Like, as long as you are clearing the bar and making him happy and sending him a gift basket at Christmas, this feels like it could be pretty sticky business.
So there is, the way I understand this works from the banking side, there's been regulatory things that have shifted with regards to how appraisers work. So if you remember back to the savings and loan scandals of the 80s, when people would do fake appraisals and that kind of stuff. And then again, when in the 2008 real estate crash, you had problems around that too. So regulatory wise, and I'm not an expert on this, it has become much more difficult for a bank just to call their guy. So like when I go now for a real estate loan, especially for owner occupied or specialty property, which it appears what this is, they will put it out to bid. And there's a pool of like 4 or 5 that will bid an individual job, or they'll say, I'm too busy. And they will tell you, okay, here's how much it's going to cost to get it appraised for the loan. And then secondarily, they'll tell you this is how long it's going to take. So you might choose the one that's $2,500 but takes 3 weeks over the one that's $2,100 and takes 7 weeks. So those are 2 things that comes back. So, I think what these guys appear to have is, and I'm not an expert in this space, just see it on the other side. The guys appear to have relationships where they've gotten on the lists, the preferred list for these 5 banks. And then I think it's super cool that they are not general real estate appraisers. So they're not competing with all the other ones. They're just like, okay, these are the only things we do. And that, I think, puts you in a much less competitive, position than if you were just a generic one doing apartment buildings or mini storage or something like that.
In this case, less competitive being good.
That's good.
Because you have to slug it out with a ton of competitors.
That's good. That means your high bids are sometimes going to be accepted, which is the goal of a business like this.
Yeah.
Especially, right, when you think about it from the bank's perspective, from a credit and underwriting view, like, hey, we don't just want the guy who does multifamily housing to, put a number on this, this convenience store and gas station. We want the guy who's the expert because we want to make sure that we're correctly collateralized on this thing.
So
that's a great
my
point.
guess is businesses like this often transact the way engineering firms do, which is they sell or to general contractors, right? They sell to insiders or staff members, come in and do a management buyout of some sort. That'd be one of the things I'd want to look at on this, which is why out of 13 appraisers, none of those folks are interested in what seems like a pretty good business. What don't we know? Because there's something about this that's like, wait a second, none of these 13 people are interested, and it's SBA qualified, and the owners really well, and the business really well. Like, something doesn't smell right about that aspect of it. I'd want to understand why.
My guess is that it has something to do with the sellers wanting a multiple of 2021 EBITDA.
Oh well,
I mean, if you had to guess, right? I mean, I would be willing to bet that, this particular broker told these guys, hey, look, yeah, I mean, somebody will pay you a multiple of, last 12 months or maybe an average of the last 2 years. And the insiders are like, well, we could just go start our own and compete. Like, right. Why would we pay you a bunch of money when we could just compete, and establish our own banner? So the tricky thing to me about this is, how do you make sure that all of the value doesn't walk out of the door? It'd be like a law firm, right? Buying a law firm. It's all non-transferable goodwill. And so, you got to make sure, right, that those people are going to stay. And if you try and walk in there, in due diligence and say, hey, everybody's getting non-competes, everybody's getting these, handcuffs, so to speak, even if they feel like golden handcuffs, I think you scare people away, and it's really difficult to keep that revenue going.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever seen a successful model where someone comes in and buys a business like this and takes these 13 appraisers and kind of gives them a small chunk of equity or ties them up in a way that it's like a half management buyout, but led by the new financial buyer? Have you ever seen a structure like that work?
Only on much larger transactions than this.
Yeah, because even if you gave them, 3%, that's not a lot of money that they could still walk from.
Yeah. Well, the other way,
I mean, I think
the other way I've seen it work. Sorry, Mills, but the other way I've seen it work is like a subset of those folks who are like the leaders will do the buyout. So it's not everybody, or like you pick the 2 or 3 and you make them partners because they have more of an owner's mindset than the folks who are generally just happy being employees, right? So I've seen that happen both on general contracting businesses, and then also like on specialty engineering firms as well.
Or like architecture, right? Environmental services. It's where you have a person, right, who's highly compensated, who has some level of credentials and, expertise. Law firms, again, same kind of thing. It's all professional services that at the end of the day, you've got to thread that line. And as a sponsor, right, if you were going to try and sponsor a deal like this, you're saying, okay, I'm going to take pretty much all the financial risk because this person might be used to making $100,000 or $150,000 a year, and they don't want to take a discount from that, in order to like squirrel away money for the buyout or to pay down a portion of their equity as it vests or something. It just seems like you're spreading it too thin. There's not enough to kind of go around with a deal this size.
Mm-hmm. So what do you guys here? What you're buying is you're buying the appraisers, you're buying the brand, and you're buying some industry knowledge and history, and then you're buying the relationships with the banks. Is there anything else that you're really getting in terms of assets when you buy this business?
I think this is a really slow business to grow organically. So just having a jump start is probably worth something. Mm-hmm. If you said, okay, look, I've got $500,000, I want to try and build a competitor to this business. I mean, it's just really hard, I think, and a very, very slow, lead cycle, sales cycle on getting this type of employee, because their alternative is I'm just going to work for myself and I'm probably going to make more money, Well, so it'd be hard. It'd be hard to get 10 appraisers. It takes you years, I think, to get 10 appraisers.
If you do the average, they're paying all in cost for these appraisers a little bit over 100 on it.
Yeah.
If you do 1.4 divided by 13. So yeah, you run the risk.
And I know individual I know individual commercial appraisers who are making 3 or 4 times that amount. Now they've been at it a long time and they have a reputation and all that stuff, but low overhead, they work when they want to, they take off when they want to, and they're making bank.
There's one other thing that's a risk embedded here that might not be easy to see at first, which is that your customers here are 98% banks, which means all of your business is driven on refinancings, basically either financing, with a sale or refinancing, which means that I want to know what happens to my business when interest rates are rising and no one wants to refinance their convenience store and gas station. And because they're commercial real estate, interest rates are rising. It's probably depressing cap rates, or it's increasing cap rates, and so you're kind of losing value on your commercial real estate. So I just wonder if that's why they had a great, coming out of 2019, and then rates got cut in back half of 2020. 2021 rates are super low. Everybody's refining their convenience store and gas station. I wonder if that's why they had a great year. You're kind of exposed to the bank financing market here fairly significantly. And if for some reason loan volume dries up, your business is going to dry up too. And it seems like you have a fixed cost business, which is potentially a scary combo, especially if you bought it with debt.
Looks like that's what happened in 2019.
Yep. That's why I would never want to buy, especially with debt, one of these that's residential focused, because you just ride these waves of housing boom and bust. I would bet that this is somewhat insulated, but you're right. I mean, it's not immune, but I don't think it's going to be as volatile as residential. I mean, earlier this year, I was hearing from residential real estate brokers and appraisers that, the brokers were having a hard time getting appraisers because they were just booked so far out. There was so much transaction volume. So you just have to make hay while the sun's shining. And then, if you're the owner of this type of thing and you financed it with debt, you've got to prepare for debt service obligations that you may not have the cash flow for later.
So one thing also about this, I think you need to have a thesis on is what's going to happen to convenience stores in the long term, right? There's a thesis that EVs are going to make nasty. I mean, let's face it, most convenience stores, except for maybe Buc-ee's and a Love's, are pretty horrible to go into. How many of those are going to survive as EVs go from whatever percentage? Let's say, we're single digit percentages right now to a third, right, of the automobiles in the US. And yeah, can they survive not selling gas? But like, why do you want to go there when GoPuff is going to deliver me my Twinkies? Like, do I really need to go to the convenience store? And it is interesting. I talked to somebody who was on the board once of a C-store, and this was 5 or 6 years ago, a big chain. And I was like, well, you guys are in trouble long-term because EV's going away. And he said, no, we're going to become neighborhood centers. I was like, oh, okay, well, see how that works out for you. But I think you need to have a thesis around that because, as the demand for gas goes down, that means the other stuff they actually make their money on is C-stores, in theory is going to go down too with less people coming to the door.
And I hear that, but I also think, there's parts of the country where that would absolutely scare me to death. And there's other parts of the country that I think will be 30 years, 40 years, 50 years away from it, for the same reason that Dollar General goes in and, they're the only place you can buy groceries in a lot of areas. But we've had people asking us about this, but I think this, we don't always highlight it, but I think this business probably trades for somewhere between 50% and 75% of revenue, like stabilized. I highly doubt that, it's going to transact off of, the 2021 projections.
Yep. So let's see, that would be half of revenue. That would be about 2.5 times EBITDA. So somewhere between a typical Main Street 4 to 5 times EBITDA and a very low typical services business multiple.
I think so.
I would have guessed 2 to 3 times EBITDA for this business too. That being said, seen some silly stuff out there in 2021, and it's SBA approved, so there's leverage. I could see it going for higher, but I would get nervous paying any multiple of 2021 EBITDA or more than kind of 3 times.
So Bill, you talk about like buyer deal fit. If you're not an appraiser and you don't know the business well, or even this particular niche, Would it scare you a bit that some strategic who maybe is the next town over hasn't decided to buy these guys at whatever multiple you're paying, or do you think this is one of those ones that's not one where I should be scared of that?
I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, I don't know this industry well enough, like whether there are huge conglomerates or if this is something more like notaries, where it's just fragmented like crazy. If it were fragmented like crazy, you don't have to worry about that. So it's something I want to learn. This one, I don't know. It's just, it doesn't seem super complicated because it's white collar workers. So you probably not gonna have as much turnover, right? The appraisers. I'm assuming they got to be either 1099s or at least pretty autonomous. Like you don't need to manage them that much. You just give them a job and they do it and they take home a
They're
check.
calling these guys staff. So I don't know if that means they're W-2 or not, but they're.
Well, even if they're W-2, like my point is it's pretty transactional job description. Yeah. You don't have to, it's not like a whole bunch of strategy and like, people managing other people and, things like that. It seems like probably close to one layer. And it seems like a smart person could come in and learn this. And there's not a lot of like really kind of dirt under the fingernails, industry specific complexity that, like there is in some of the yard maintenance businesses or home services or the stuff that seems easy from the outside and you get into it and you're like, holy smokes, this is way more complicated, right? And difficult than it looks. This one smells like it might actually be not super complicated. And it's kind of just more white collar transactional business. And so you might be able to get more of your traditional financial buyer in feeling a little more comfortable in a business like this.
Well, I think
on this,
go ahead.
Just really quick before we wrap up. I think the nexus of value on this one is where did the leads go? If the leads go to individual appraisers, then you as the owner have very little value or very little leverage, right? But if this is primarily like a sales organization and the owners are the ones who receive all the leads, and then they say, oh, I have a guy who's really good, or I have a guy in South Carolina or, in Florida, and I'm going to send it to him, that becomes a lot more valuable because then the appraisers are just waiting to kind of receive their weekly allotment of leads or, of customers. I think also you could buy this thing if you were, I wouldn't want to be like an electrical engineer from Des Moines and like try and buy this thing and move to Georgia. But if you're like a broker or a property manager or you are in the mix from a real estate perspective, I think you could get up to speed on this. And it's fairly formulaic, right? You don't have to have 30 years experience in commercial appraisal in order to do one of these things. But there is a hurdle, a compliance hurdle, like you said, Michael.
Yeah. Well, I think I would, if I was to get into this business and interested in it, first thing I do, I'd get the SIM and I'd go network to 2 or 3 people that are like the old saws in this business and be like, what don't I understand about this? This looks pretty good. Or how would I make this work? And yeah, that's one of the nice things about getting old. Like I know a bunch of 60-year-old men and women, like I call them and be like, hey, tell me how not to be stupid about this. And, networking to those is really a good thing. Cause I think they would tell you some stuff and be like, oh, you need to think about it this way. Or, there's a new law coming down that's going to affect it this way. I mean, that's besides the regulatory hurdle. There's also like, do they change the banking rules yet again to make it more difficult on the appraisers? Like they could regulate your fees. Right now, I don't think that's the case, but lots of bad things could happen if we do it in the name of consumer protection.
Yep. All right. Let's wrap this one up. Move on to our second deal. So Michael, this is you.
Sweet. Let me pull this one up. Okay. So this is a fun one. At least I found it fun. Hopefully everybody else does too. It's on Buy Biz Sell. And so it came out a week or so ago. And it's actually a real estate staging company in Silicon Valley. So basically what they do is when somebody wants to sell a home, the owner or the broker will pay this company to come in, put together a plan of what fake furniture is going to look like, and then they install furniture to make the home look like it's lived in and is really nice. So, you see those funny Zillow listings where like somebody has like a full suit of armor on the wall or like a weird like, dungeon in the basement. Like this is how you make it middle of the road to where it's more appealing to buyers. Because it's been shown just that a staged house will sell for more than a blank house. So people invest in it and they pay a firm like this to come do that. So So these guys are in Santa Clara County, so heart of Silicon Valley. They're asking $350,000. Cash flows $221,000 on $350,000 or on $450,000 in revenue. So asking $350 for it, so about 1.5 times revenue or 1.5 times seller earnings. The business did $450,000 according to them. EBITDA is not applicable, so that's fine. Zero FF&E. Inventory is not applicable. We'll probably want to dig into that because these guys own furniture, and it was established in 2015. This is a business that, according to broker, during the fiscal year from April 20th to March 21st, the pandemic, 12 months, sales went up almost 3%, but the seller discretionary earnings went up almost 35%. So that number we were just quoted in terms of them making $221,000 looks high compared to the average over time. As I said before, real estate staging is the most important factor in effective marketing of upscale homes in the Silicon Valley metro area. This established 6-year-old profitable company is highly respected and sought after interior stager in Santa Clara County. Using their versatile and fashionable furnishings, the experienced designers and stagers serve the exacting requirements of the most prestigious real estate brokers. So if you're selling a $6 million home in Atherton, which is a fancy neighborhood there in Silicon Valley, you're willing to pay $10,000 to $15,000 to have one of these guys come in and make the home look like Martha Stewart just came through with a magic wand. Primarily serves Santa Clara County, San Jose metro area, and San Francisco Peninsula, so very much a local business. Services include staging, design, and property preparation. Annual sales are in the $440,000 range, with the latest year's SDE, sellers discretionary earnings, of $221,000. 2020, they were $448,000 and yada, 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 and about the same size for the previous year for 2019. They operate out of two 1,800 square foot warehouses, renting for $5,300 a month. And the prospective buyer could continue that. And you sell to real estate agents who engage services directly or refer sellers to the business. They have over 36 active customers, about 500 in the database. The 3 largest customers represent 13, 12, and 6.5% of sales, respectively. So they're trying to tell you there's not a lot of customer concentration. They talk about staff and growth, yada, yada, yada. There's basically 1 full-time owner-manager, 2 part-time employees, and 2 part-time on-demand contract movers. So this is a business clearly where the owner-manager is out doing everything. You're a Jack or Jill of all trades. They have a bunch of assets: sofas, chairs, tables, rugs, mattresses, pillows, paintings, vases, etc. And the cost to replace all these at book is $521,000. We haven't really talked about that, but it looks like that is included in the asking price of $349,000.
Yeah, because they say the cost to replace all these items would easily exceed the asking price for the business.
Yeah, so you buy the business.
I think it is included.
You buy the business, you get decor for life thrown in. All the throw pillows you could ever need, Bill.
Hope you like their taste.
By the way, I go to a coffee shop with my friends, and literally the owner of the coffee shop, I think he hates us because there are throw pillows everywhere. There's no place to sit. Like, it is ridiculous. There are more throw pillows in there than customers by an order of magnitude every time. Anyway, Doug.
He wants to keep you turning over, right?
Throw pillows are the dumbest thing ever. Like, I have no idea why the university, we need to ban those when I'm king. All right. All right. So, the broker and yada, yada, yada. So this is the business. Looks priced really good. What do we think?
So this is, have you guys ever, if you're listening, you've ever paid for this, if you're selling a house, you probably had sticker shock when they told you how much it was going to cost to stage your house. I mean, it's thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, and I was floored. Yeah. But when you think about it, it's because it's a pain in the ass. Like you gotta move all this furniture in. You gotta decorate it. It sits there. Yeah. You gotta move it out. You probably break it every so often when you move it. So I think this is what this business basically is you got to be friends with realtors. Mm-hmm. Because my experience is that the realtor drives the leads here, right? You hire a realtor to sell your house, and the realtor goes, look, man, you should really stage it. We're going to get more money. I'm going to make more money in my fee. And this is the stager that I use. So I would be asking around on customer concentration. Maybe I don't have a lot of concentration in the people who cut me the checks, but maybe I do have a lot of concentration in where my leads come from.
Or one firm, right? One firm.
Yeah, like maybe it's one realtor.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I want to understand.
Though, we're about to sell our house, and our real estate our real estate broker, our listing agent, is including staging in their listing fee, or in their commission, if we want to, if we need to. So I hear you, because my impression, Bill, is that like this would be several $1,000s, for a $400,000 house or something like that. You're paying, probably $5,000 or something. So that was my impression, but also like that. I don't think the listing agent is going to pay $5,000 because that'd be the majority of their commission. You know what I mean?
Not in Silicon Valley, though.
These are
they're getting
these are Silicon Valley.
They're getting 6% on
totally different.
They're getting 6% on $3 million tract homes in Palo Alto.
Mills, your South Carolina is showing.
Yeah, exactly. I live in a really nice neighborhood. I promise it's not a shanty.
The other thing that's interesting too is written right here in the teaser. It says the cost to replace all these items, is more than the asking price. But literally the next sentence says, nothing is old or tired. The assets are regularly culled, so only the best is used in staging, which gives you the tip here that, remember, good housekeeping or Better Homes and Gardens or whatever changes what's in style like every 6 months. And your house better look hip if you want to sell for millions of dollars. So what I wonder, I don't know this business, but I wonder if, whether you actually want to own the sticks, the fabric and the wood furniture, or whether you want to like have there's some like rental model, where you want to give it all back to Rent-A-Center every 6 months, and turn it over and be more of a less of a fixed cost model. So I really want to understand, I'm always the guy that says, look at the quality of that inventory. In this case, it's the quality of the inventory, the equipment. If this were, it's basically an equipment rental business. Yeah. And it's like, what's the useful life of this equipment, the furniture?
Yeah, there's an unknown level of CapEx that has to happen here every year that, at least in the previous year, it didn't show up in the cash flow. But, when the fads change, like, and everybody goes to hot pink in their house, like, it's just a matter of time.
And talk about buyer business fit. Like, this is, if I own this business, not a designer. So assuming I would have a designer on staff, that person would come to me every 6 months and be like, we need to buy this thing. And I go, absolutely not. Like, no, like that other couch is fine. We've had it for 4 years. Right?
You need more throw pillows.
Exactly. So I would not be a great owner for this, because I would tire very quickly of not only turning over all my style, but spending CapEx.
Well, it could explain somewhat why the business is going to trade at this kind of asking price. Like, you need almost a unicorn of a person that wants this sort of hassle and this sort of activity, right? So you got to love doing design. You got to love schmoozing. You got to love corralling what looks like a bunch of kind of difficult part-time employees, right? You got to love doing all the other aspects of your business, and you got to be okay when they call you and it's like, hey, we have an open house in 45 minutes. Somebody spilled coffee on the couch. What are you doing about it? And it's Sunday morning and you're at brunch. Like that is you deserve to get paid, but it's also like all of those things together, somebody wanting to do that, which none of us, I know you guys pretty well now, none of us on the podcast should do that job. That sounds like the worst job ever for us. But to find somebody that wants all of those things, that Venn diagram, like, good luck.
I think you got to be a designer, right? You just got to like love interior design.
Yeah.
Or you own, right? You own a, like, I don't know why somebody who does you own a furniture store in this county, you should totally try to do this yourself, right? And maybe you buy it with some very unique deal structure. But if you already own the furniture and you have slow moving inventory and you just are, sticking it into this kind of environment, I think that makes a lot of sense. Or like I've talked about my brother's business on the podcast before, if you own a moving business, this makes a lot of sense, because to me, the hardest part is the designers, like, they know this stuff, and you could probably rinse and repeat and reuse the same inventory. Yeah. But getting it in and out of the house, like you said, I mean, it's like, hey, we're listing the house. By the way, we kind of forgot to give you a heads up, but the listing is going live in 48 hours and we need the stuff in. Or the house sold and we need that stuff out right away. That's logistically very tricky.
Hooey. But the price is right.
I don't know. The price is right. It's a good add-on, maybe if you're elsewhere in the value chain, if you're adjacent in the value chain to this, or if you love interior design.
Yeah.
Or if you're doing a transaction adjacent real estate services roll up and are raising at 5x revenue and just need to buy something.
Where do we send the term sheets? Yeah, I mean, the other thing is that affects this, right, is the SDE is pretty good, but like I think given what it costs to live in the Bay Area now, like the buyer universe for this has to be somebody that lives in Santa Clara County already. Like you're already established there, because there's just like the way housing prices are there's just no way like a normal person can come in, afford a house there, and sign up for the risk associated with this job that gives off this kind of cash flow only. And I know this is the most crazy.
Not to mention that SDE is going to get cut down, right? I mean, you're talking about probably $60,000-$75,000 a year in debt service if you buy this business. So then all of a sudden your SDE's whittled down even more. You definitely can't afford to live in that area and be in the circles you would need to be in. Maybe the buyer of this has a really wealthy spouse, and this is their hobby.
There you go. Hobby business. Yep. Well, that was a good one. So that brings to conclusion our real estate transaction adjacent services episode. Thank you for listening. And Michael, if you would give a shout out to our longest running sponsor, go ahead.
Thanks again to Jake and the team at tinyacquisitions.com, the site where you can go and buy ready to run tiny businesses and get your feet wet with that, either as your full-time job or a side hustle. So, and if you're a prospective or interested supporter or advertiser of the podcast, email us. We are accepting more advertisers. And if you're a listener and you want to help us do better editing and all that kind of stuff and eventually break even, please go to our podcast page where you can become a patron and give us money every month. So we are very grateful to accept any of that.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you to our sponsor, Tiny Acquisitions, and to all of our patrons out there on the interwebs. That's it for this episode of Acquisitions Anonymous. We will see you guys next week.